Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Cons of Tarkir. We are in Hawaii. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Zach Hill. And we're just about to get underway for the first round of action here. The draft has happened. We've got Jeremy Dezani looking super chipper as always there. He's, he is player of the year. And he didn't get there by being a bad Magic player, Zach.
Well, and he didn't get there by drafting bad decks. A couple people on Twitter said...
Seth Manfield, his opponent here.
Yeah, and Seth, multiple-time Grand Prix winner, limited specialist. I've heard a lot of people call Dezani's deck the best Cons of Tarkir draft deck they've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I'm looking. He's got 2 Avalanche Tusker, 2 Bears Companion, Icy Blast. He got like 8th Ice Feather Aven, another hit, Savage Knuckleblade. Basically, every single card you want in that combination. The question is, can he cast them?
That is the question. So we're going to see, hopefully, one of the best teamer decks we've seen, and then maybe we will see over the course of the weekend. But we are underway here, and we've got a pretty typical opener here for this format, Zach. A lot of mana fixing early, but now an assertive start here from Seth Manfield. He's got a Leaping Master to start piling on some damage early.
And looking at the hand viewer, we've got Dezani actually just top-decked his second land. He needed something to do, and he got it. So that's going to let him play a threat, maybe something to potentially trade with the Master, and that is very, very important in this game.
He plays a Highland game here, which is going to do a great job of keeping that Leaping Master at bay. It puts Seth Manfield in a position where he either has to use all of his mana for the turn to get in for 2 damage, not going to happen, or just stay back with his Master, maybe even just trade it off. Yeah, and Dezani can't wait to make that trade. He knows that that Leaping Master can take on a different role later in the game where it can get in for pesky amounts of damage. But we see that Manfield had other plans with his Mardu Horde Chief. He was also triggering Raid with that attack, and that's going to net him a Warrior token as well. So a solid turn 2, turn 3 here for Manfield. Clears away a blocker and follows up with 3 power and 4 toughness as well.
I mean, right now, Dezani is just trying to figure out how to survive for as long as possible. And that 2 life, very important. I mean, he knows he's stuck on mana. He's got a couple of plays he can make, but you have to assume with Tusker and Companion in your hand that you're going to win the late game.
He just drew another land up the top. Not too bad. And an Heir of the Wilds, really solid 2-drop. Looks pretty decent on this board, too. He can trade it off for the Horde Chief, or he can eat a token with it. It has Death Touch, of course, and it's a 2/2. And later down the line, it can attack for even more. And it looks like Dezani's fine with just taking a damage. He's already gained 3 life over the course of this game, so he's actually still above the 20 mark, even after taking the 2 from the Horde Mate. And here is a face-down Morph creature for Seth Manfield.
Yeah, I mean, Heir of the Wild is just a far superior card on the board to a generic 2/3 as the Horde Chief does. He can trade that off with basically anything in Manfield's deck that doesn't have flying. So even though Dezani looking to trade in general, not going to make that trade when he can take the beating and still be above 20 life.
Now he's got basically all of his colors of mana lined up here. And I see he's got an Icy Blast, Mystic Weaver in his hand. So he's got options. He can play face-down Morph.
And when we're talking about morphs, we see that morphs in play designator right there, and 5 mana. Now, Weapon Master costs 6. What that means is that it costs 5 mana to flip the Weapon Master face up. So a new tool we've got access to on the broadcast.
So that's going to show you which ones we have on any given point. And so the morph that Seth Manfield has is the Efreet Weapon Master you see there. So he needs 1 more mana to be able to turn that face up. But right now, Dezani's really trying to plan out this play. You'll see this players take their time at this point when they're a little bit crimped on mana, like Dezani is here. He really can't sequence this incorrectly and still win the game, so he's really going to take his time. And here is another Morph. I think this is a Mistfire Weaver that he's playing from his hand here.
Yeah, Weaver, the 3/1 flying. He can turn it face up for 2 and a blue and give something hexproof. Obviously very, very good in response to a removal spell, but a 3/1 flying body in this format also quite powerful.
Quite powerful, yeah. You'll find that there's a lot of ways to gum up the game. To gum up the ground game in this format, and that will allow, that makes flyers that much better. They're always good and limited. You know, flyers are basically the best.
we see Manfield with Bring Low. He can use it to take out either the Morph or the Heir of the Wilds. The question, I mean, the thing is, he's only getting in for a few points of damage to be able to do that. He can attack for 5, and Dezani can still trade with his Morph if he taps out early. So hard for Manfield to be aggressive in this position. He's got a lot of lands in his hand. He kind of has the exact opposite problem that Dezani does.
Yeah, I see a Nomad Outpost, a Mountain of Plains. All right, so he's going to play his land pre-combat, which is a signal that that Morph is ready to be turned face up. And it's going to make Jeremy Dezani have to think twice about how he wants to do his blocks here. There's a huge difference in this format when it comes to Morphs, whether a player has 4 mana available or 5.
Right, and 5 is just absolutely game-changing with the Weapon Master. When he flips it face up, he can give anything +3/+0 in first strike, meaning that if Dezani double blocks here, I mean, the Weapon Master can generate a 2 for 0. I mean, kill both of Dezani's creatures without losing anything. So if these are Dezani's blocks, I mean, this could be a big moment in this game.
Well, oh yeah, this could be really nasty.
Right, because the Weapon Master has first strike.
Brutal, because it has first strike itself, and he's going to be able to give the +3/+0 to something else. That's going to let the token trade off for the Morph. And Dezani, I think he thought the Weapon Master was going to die there.
Right.
He's got to reveal his Morph as well as it goes to the graveyard. We're going to be seeing that throughout the course of the weekend too. And Dezani finds himself under a ton of pressure all of a sudden with 6 power, and Manfield's got to feel great about how that turn went.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, he didn't even lose a card. He lost a token.
Yeah, he lost half a card, a third of a card, not much.
And, I mean, Dezani's still a lot of goodies in his hand. We see a Temur Ascendancy, powerful card, but only important if he's able to get some more lands to cast the Companion and the Tusker. And the haste, only important when you're on offense. And right now he is very much on the defensive.
Yeah, Seth Manfield has to just be super happy right now. You know, a card like Temur Ascendancy is conditional. It can be very, very powerful, but this is not even close to what Dezani wants to be doing at this stage of the game. And Manfield sees that Dezani has now missed 2 land drops in a row and played a card that did essentially nothing.
I mean, he can use his Icy Blast just to tap down 2 creatures, essentially giving him 6 life and buy time. The Wetland Sandbar right now just doesn't trade with anything, not incredibly powerful. I mean, he can attack. I mean, I guess he's representing just wanting to block the Ifrit here. He didn't even get in for 2 damage, so.
He also didn't block.
Huh.
And Manfield passes the turn back with nothing. So this is the good news for Dezani, is that Seth Manfield seems to be flooding a bit. He's got quite a few lands on the battlefield. While he's way ahead on board, he's also not solidifying that position turn after turn, and that's going to make things easier for Dezani if he can find some lands, which he does here. He finds a mountain, so can he get back on track? That Weapon Master, Ifrit Weapon Master, excuse me, is going to be such a problem, though, for Dezani, because it's got first strike. Like, you know, the Sandbar is just not even part of the equation that's going to need to get that thing blocked. And in it comes. Could have attacked last turn. Decides to this turn.
I mean, even if Dezani gets to 5, Tusker and Bear's Companion, none of them deal with a Weapon Master.
No.
I mean, you block it with a 4/4, okay, your 4/4 just dies. If you block it with a 4/4 and the 2/2, the 2/2 isn't big enough to kill a 4/3 Ifrit Weapon Master.
Interestingly, there, Seth decided to use a kill shot there on the Sandbar.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just so that Dezani doesn't have a chump blocker if he needs it. I mean, we're about to see an Icy Blast, I think, unless Dezani just wants to go to
No,
1.
you're right. It is an Icy Blast. But this is just not a way for Jeremy Dezani realistically to dig himself out of this game. It's going to buy him one more draw step. But the problem is he needs to find an answer for that Weapon Master. Now, if that draw step gives him an answer for that, then all of a sudden he's in business. Here's a Morph creature for Manfield, who, remember, is still holding Bring Low and has the mana to cast it if needed as well. So this is going to get really, really rough for Dezani. What he needs to do is find his own Bring Low.
Yeah.
Dezani.
One of the only ways to deal with a Weapon Master, if he gets to 5th land, he can play Tusker, attack with it, kill the Morph, fall to 1 on the counter attack, and play Bear's Command, but it doesn't get the land. There's nothing he can do.
Now, one thing you'll see here is Seth Manfield just turned up Dragon's Eye Savant. That is a key thing that you must do in this format. You are required to show the other player your morph every single time, and if you don't, the punishment can be pretty severe, including a game loss. So we have Seth Manfield taking game 1 over Jeremy Dezani. We'll be back after these messages.
Ultra Pro is the place to go for all your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information.
Yeah, and welcome back to the feature match area here at Pro Tour Cons of Tarkir. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Zach Hill, and we just saw Seth Manfield kind of put the beat down on Dezani when he couldn't find lands. He basically just got stuck on lands. Seth had a key turn with Weapon Master free, and that was about it. So why don't we jump over to one of our side tables here and get a little live look-in going on one of our other matches.
Eventful. Seems like you needed blue for about...
It looks like the game we are going to has been stopped temporarily, so we'll wait just a minute to make sure that we're actually going to a game that's playing as opposed to one that is being halted.
I mean, we kind of snuck it in there, but did y'all see that ad for the Magic the Gathering strategy board game?
You and I looked at each other. Why don't we jump over to Alexander Hain and Ichikawa over there? Let's see what they're up to over here. Ooh, one of my favorite, in fact, my favorite creature in the set.
Which is?
Ice Feather Raven.
That is a good one.
Yeah, it's face up right now, so I'm assuming it did some work. It's also a Chief of the Blade for Hain, though it does look like we're in the relatively early stages here. Ichikawa coming off of his top 8, the last Pro Tour.
Yeah, Ichikawa absolutely on a tear. I mean, 2 big results last season, sitting in the feature match area, and it looked like he's in a pretty good position right now.
He trades off his Ice Feather Raven for the Chief of the Blade.
And that's something we're going to be seeing a lot this event, a turn 3 morph creature. Looks like black-white warriors versus Sidisi.
Yes, we have Sultai, and there it is, another Heir of the Wilds, a card, you know, that it looks like not a lot until you really think about what it does in the format and read it, and all of a sudden the card just gets better and better and better. It's an uncommon, so we won't see it too often, but we've already seen it in both of our matches, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a weird set of abilities. You know, it's if you have a 4 power or greater, you can attack for 3 points of damage with a 2/2 Death Touch for only 2 men. I mean, it trades with basically any creature on the ground, and this format is all about, you know, between the morphs and the tricolor cards, just meaty mid-range creatures. So the card gets in for 4-6 points of damage, incredibly hard to block, and then trades with your opponent's best threat. You got a deceptively powerful creature.
Yeah, that's great. Another face-down morph here for Hain, as he's moving his game plan forward slowly. Ichikawa looks like he went pretty deep here.
Yeah, was that a Rampart? So yeah, not quite enough white mana to cast it.
Why don't we jump back over to our main feature match between Jeremy Dezani and Seth Manfield here. We'll keep an eye on this one for you guys as well. But it looks like they're just about ready. Yeah, there they are. I like Dezani. He's playing teamer. He's got the teamer sleeves.
Yeah, representing.
Now, those are Obzon sleeves over there, so a little bit of deception from Seth Manfield, or he just grabbed the sleeves that were closest to him, but one or the other. So Dezani's going to be on the play here.
Dezani 21, Manfield 20.
And we're going to see if he's going to have a chance to maybe hit some more of his land drops. He really did struggle with that in the first game. He got behind and stayed that way for the duration. Manfield got to still had all these a bring low as well, too. I mean, it was not pretty.
Yeah, I mean, a much, much better start for Dezani, though. 2 lands, kept a 7-card hand, has access to every color of mana he needs.
Yeah, he's got Thornwood Falls into Opulent Palace, so he is in a nice position to start resolving things likely to be more powerful than what Manfield's doing. Manfield has kept his deck pretty streamlined. You can see he's playing Leaping Master, which is, that's a decent card. It's not a great card. And here's a face-down morph for Dezani. So a decent start, and this is always an interesting question of, you know, if attacked, would you trade off your morph? Of course, it depends on which one it is. And here comes the attack, and Dezani says, bring it. Don't care. Seth Manfield playing 17 lands. A lot of people play 18 lands in this format, but it looks like he decided to go with 17, but pretty nice mana there. He's got all 3 of his colors on turn 3, so you can't ask for better than that.
Yeah, just all basics.
All basics.
The get there.
And another morph here for Manfield. So this morph is an Efreet Weapon Master. And it's a Witness of the Ages for Jeremy Dezani that's face down there. I like his draw here, though. He's got a pretty nice grip, another Thornwood Falls, but he's got a Savage Punch, Long Shot Squad, which is a great blocker. Wow, and he's got a Snowhorn Rider and an Avalanche Tusker as well. So things looking pretty good for Dezani. He does need to hit a land or 2 more to kind of make this hand work, but he's got plenty of time to do it, it looks like, and I think he's going to play that Snowhorn Rider. Interesting, Zach, these the cycle, there's a cycle of common morphs, 1 for each clan. And I think they're a little easy to overlook, but they're actually just super, super powerful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all of them basically cost 6 to hard cast in one of the clans, you know, 5 to unmorph. And every single time you unmorph the card, it has a game-changing effect on the battlefield.
Right, and you can pick these up. I mean, they're common. You see them coming around the table late for people that don't want to invest, and they're great. Efreet Weapon Master being the one for the Jeskai.
Although looking at Dezani's board, unmorphing the Rider is going to be a challenge. Earlier I said he had access to every color of mana. It's actually not true. He doesn't have red, despite having 2 dual lands and Opulent Palace in play. So we still might be seeing Dezani in a bit of mana trouble.
Yeah, he does have 6 red sources floating around in his list still, so he's pretty likely to pick one up unless he gets put under tons of pressure here, but so far that hasn't been the case. So Snowhorn Rider gets brought low. And always an interesting question as well about which morph to kill. In this case, it was a little more straightforward because killing the untapped morph let Seth Manfield attack. But there are some times when there's decisions to be made about whether you think your opponent has played their best morph first, their worst morph first, that kind of thing. And there's a long shot squad for Dezani who does not hit that 5th mana. So he doesn't have 5 and he doesn't have red. But again, you know, he's sitting at 16. He's under a little bit of pressure here. If Manfield plays a land pre-combat, which he just did, now things get interesting. Because Dezani now has to think about how he wants to block. He saw the Weapon Master last game, and he's certainly going to be aware of it this time around.
Oh, okay.
Is that set adrift?
That is set adrift, and that is huge here because that means that Dezani cannot draw that 5th land that Manfield has to suspect he needs. I mean, looking at Dezani's board, seeing no red, that basically equates to him taking a full extra turn. If Dezani just recast the long shot squad, it basically just means that Seth gets to repeat that last turn all over again.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think that the role certainly changed there. Dezani has been consistently attacking with his morph and not leaving it back to potentially trade for Leaping Master. And I think he might have to change that line now. Yeah, he's going to leave his morph at home this time. You know, I think he felt like things were moving pretty nicely in his direction. But now they seem to have switched back to Seth. That was a huge play, that set adrift. Effectively blanking a draw step, keeping Dezani off of that 5th mana and making him recast his long shot squad. But during that process, he took 4 damage as well. So Seth has to line up his attacks. He's got his opponent tapped out here. So he really can take a minute to kind of think through what the best plan is.
He's got a crippling chill he can use that could get the long shot archers out of the way. The thing is, I think either of Dezani's creatures is going to block the Leaping Master no matter what. So tapping a blocker doesn't really accomplish a whole lot, and that would prevent him from unmorphing his Weapon Master. I mean, I think given how tremendous of an effect the Weapon Master had in the previous game, he just wants to flip it up as quick as possible and make Dezani show him an answer to it, because it doesn't look like he has that many ways of dealing with a 4-3 first strike in his entire deck, especially without red mana.
So two-time GP champion Seth Manfield agrees with you, Zach. And he's just going to battle with his Weapon Master here. And Dezani says, I'm just going to take it. And Seth says, you know what? I don't need to get an extra 2 damage in here for the cost of essentially my entire turn.
Right.
He also has that +3/+0 triggered ability from the Effete Weapon Master that he can kind of keep in his pocket. And instead, he can develop out his board a little bit more with another morph. Now, this one, not super exciting. It's a War Behemoth, but it's decent.
I mean, it's setting up Crippling Chill for whatever creature Dezani has that's most important. That's important because if he gets a red mana cast Bear's Companion, he can tap down the 4/4. He can tap down the 3/3 and force a block with the 4/4.
Ooh, I think he just drew a mountain.
There's a lot that can go wrong.
He just drew a mountain, Zach.
Dezani.
So Dezani's on the board here, buddy. He is now fully charged up with that critical 5th mana and his 3rd color. So the question is, where does he go from here? And you can see on his face, it's exactly what he's thinking about. How do I craft this game? Assuming that that's a Weapon Master, assuming that it's not, he has to really look through a whole bunch of different iterations here. But now at least he has the tools. It's just a matter of finding the right path now.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a lot of time to do it. I mean, he's at 10 life, and we know that Manfield has a Crippling Chill in his hand, so at minimum, I mean, whatever the best creature Dezani casts, Manfield can deal with for essentially 2 attacks, which is what he's thinking about right now. I mean, it's a big moment because he needs that red mana, but I mean, he's got to be able to get those cards out of his hand. I mean, I think the most important card in Dezani's hand is Savage Punch, because that's the thing he can use to kill the Weapon Master. One of the very few ways in his deck to be able to do that. He just needs to get a 4-power creature on the battlefield first.
All right, he's going to start things off with an attack. Manfield has a morph and a 2/1, but just says take it. He's not worried about his life total. And what do we have here from Dezani? Is this the Bear's Companion? Yes, it is. So he's going to get a 4/4 and a 2/2 and really bolster his position here, but he's got to be careful. The one thing you learn quickly when playing against the Jeskai, and even sometimes with, is that they're capable of putting in huge chunks of damage in one fell swoop. All right, so Crippling Chill locks down the 4/4 Bear. Of course, it draws Seth Manfield a card. He's going to get his card for his draw step and see if he can piece together a way to get in enough damage here.
I mean, Weapon Masters +3/+0, you normally think of it as a combat trick, but it actually can just go to the face on whatever Dezani is unable to block. With Dezani at 10, I mean, if Weapon Master itself gets through, that's 7 damage. He's already got 6 power worth of attackers, even if nothing unmorphs, threatening 9.
Well, so the Weapon Master does have to target another creature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but still, something's not going to get
Right.
blocked here.
There are still 2 other creatures for him to be able to target. So, I mean, it's pretty certain that Dezani's going to have to block something.
Right.
And you can always just turn War Behemoth face up and trade with whichever either of Dezani's creatures is blocking it.
I mean, does it even trade? Doesn't it just eat it?
Yeah, it just eats it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kill.
I mean, behemoths need food sometimes.
Yeah. Manfield at 14, not really in any danger of dying himself. He's sort of firmly in the driver's seat. He got Dragon Eye Savants this turn, doesn't really accomplish very much for him.
All right, so the solution to the problem is attack with everything.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an incredibly challenging block
Yeah, this is the beauty of Morph, right? This is where Dezani has to try to decide so many different things about what this Morph is up to. So he's going to put Long Shot Squad in front of Leaping Master. He's going to let the middle Morph through. And he's going to block the fourth Morph. So I think that Jeremy assumes that the second Morph that we have labeled there is a Freet Weapon Master.
Cards in your hand.
And he's much happier letting that through for 4.
Right.
And not having a creature get eaten. And it looks like he's right here. Though I wonder if the play is just to turn the War Behemoth face up.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
I mean, the problem is he does lose the Leaping Master in that scenario.
Yeah, I really, yeah. I mean, good blocks by Dezani.
Yeah, these are sweet blocks, as it turns out. Remember, Dezani does not know what those morphs are. For us, even knowing, it's like tricky to figure it out. But Dezani actually just made a sweet, sweet block here. Because I think that Manfield's compelled to flip up the Weapon Master so that his Leaping Master will trade with the Long Shot Squad. I don't think that he can just let his creature die here. No, he's going for it. All right. So pay 5, flip it up. He's like, yep, sure, you get to eat my creature. You take 2 damage. I get to eat your 2/2. He plays a land, gains a life here, and passes it back. So that worked out really well for Jeremy Dezani. The bear doesn't untap this turn, thanks to Crippling Chill. But he gets an untap step here at 8 life, and this is a big turn. If Jeremy can really solidify his board here, he might be able to turn this game around.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking about is, I mean, A, things could have gone so differently if you just blocked a different morph, and B, what if Manfield just doesn't attack with a War Behemoth? That means Dezani really just doesn't have any good blocks at this point. So I think Manfield was just kind of gambling that Dezani would block the other way.
Interesting. So that Witness of the Ages still kind of camping out as a morph. You can turn it up to become a 4/4.
I mean, the thing is, on Manfield's next attack, things are still really bad for Dezani. Because the War Behemoth with a +3/+0 boost can trade with an Avalanche Tusker and outright kill anything else. Still, nothing is in a good position to block the Weapon Master.
No,
so
you're right.
Dezani is absolutely not out of the fire just yet.
This is where a card like Icy Blast would be really great. He now has Ferocious thanks to that bear. And he could take some of that heat off of him and even get in for some damage potentially and start to try to, I mean, Seth's at 15, but right now if you look, Jeremy's got 4, 7, 9 power. That's a 2-turn clock, and that's without turning Witness of the Ages face up.
Yeah, I mean, I think a Savage Punch right here it could be just critical. It could deal with the Efreet Weapon Master. It could provide a big clock for Dezani on the attack. You know, it's basically betting that Manfield doesn't have a way to deal 5 damage, which I think would basically be Arrow Storm.
Savage indeed, my friend.
Very, very savage punch.
Most people just call it Bear Punch.
Bear
Just
punch.
call Bear Punch your guy.
Yeah, I mean, the game just totally swung around on that last attack. And he can even follow that up with a Highland game, so he gets to develop his board, too. I mean, the thing about that bear is that even though it's tapped, it's a 4-power creature, which turns on the Ferocious for Savage Punch.
All right, so Long Shot Squad is going to pick up a counter. That's going to make it a 4/4. It's also going to give it reach. And it's also going to give any other creatures that pick up a +1/+1 counter reach as well, though that doesn't look like that's part of the game plan here. But let's get Savage.
Yeah, one would have to think. Yeah. Now what's fighting?
I want to know if it's the bear, because the bear is supposed to be getting punched. That's,
Yeah.
it doesn't. I mean, he's you know, being careful to play around any potential combat tricks or anything, but if he wants to attack as well, remember the +2/+2 will stay, so if he clears the way, he can get in there for some damage potentially as well. And there it is. Efreet down, and he did do it with this morph so that he can attack. He's at 8, And you mentioned it, Zach. He is in a little bit of a situation here, but the Highland game gets him out of this situation. He's basically compelled to block with that Highland game here, though, to not die to Aerostorm.
I mean, the fact that that Weapon Master was not able to turn face up, I mean, we saw how few answers Dezani had to it, but Savage Punch is one of them.
Yes.
And now, I mean, he's got, what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 power on the next attack, and that's not even taking into account Witness of the Ages flipping up. The game has turned around at this point.
And remember, he got in for 4 that turn, so Seth Manfield's down to 11. It's interesting because you'd think that Seth would be in a position, you know, based on the way this game's gone, where he can attack and force a trade here so that if Dezani's worried about Aerostorm, which he should be. And, yep, he's got to do it. You normally would just say, sure, go to 5, no problem, but you can't do it. It's actually going to jump him up to 10. So what's the follow-up play for Manfield? Well, it's a morph with 4 mana available and a second morph. Okay, so he has rebuilt his board, but 2 face-down morphs, those are not going to cut it versus what Jeremy Dezani has as far as power level, and it's 10 to 11. Like, somehow Seth felt like he was way ahead this game, and Jeremy finds himself with a much better board state and very close in life total.
Well, it was all about that extra 2 damage he tried to sneak in by attacking with his War Behemoth. That meant that Dezani had blocks that were going to force Manfield to lose creatures. You know, but if Dezani had blocked the other morph instead of the Behemoth, this would be a completely different game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's highlighting the power of the morph mechanic, is that you really don't know. And not only do you not know what's going to happen, your opponent doesn't necessarily know what's going to happen. And 2 face-down morphs that look exactly identical can yield totally different results when they turn face up.
Yeah, it makes this is one of the things that makes this draft format absolutely fascinating. And in comes the team. Dezani says, this is a lethal attack, by the way.
Right.
At least it could be. Seth doesn't actually know for sure that it is, but he should assume that.
I mean, but Manfield still can attack back for 10 if he keeps the Weapon Master alive. That's 4 from that, and if he pumps the War Behemoth, that's 6. That's a 10-point attack.
Wow.
So
Dezani needs something to block, basically, or a removal spell, or a way to get in here. I mean, there's some pretty, become immense. Not that he can play around it, Seth Manfield, but that's the kind of card that's like, whoops, won that game.
Now, this is interesting. If he played the Savants face up, it would be able to survive this attack no matter what. What he's saying right now to Dezani, I mean, I think he wants Dezani to spend mana to flip up his Witness of the Ages, because that means he can't play a blocker, which means that Manfield can counterattack.
And since Seth has such a big hit coming on the backswing, wow, this has been a great game.
Yeah, I mean, a ton of momentum shifts happening in this game. And this is a big moment to Dezani. I mean, this is a win-or-lose moment right here.
Yes.
We know that if he flips up Witness of the Ages, which seems like a great play, just killing the morph, he is facing down lethal. On the other hand, if he casts Avalanche Tusker, not really a lot of good attacks for Seth, and he really needs to rip a removal spell that still allows him to flip Weapon Master to be able to win this game. This is the choice of the match for Dezani.
You can tell.
And he's already seen 1 Weapon Master hit the bin. So the likelihood that it's another Weapon Master is just very low, and it looks like he's thinking about flipping it up.
I think he's going for it. He certainly thought through all of his options here. looks at his hand really quickly, and he did it. It is now face up, so that has happened. And there's the Savants that hits the bin, and that's the difference between the type of blocks that you can have here.
I mean, look at Manfield. I mean, he's jittering in his seat right here.
Yes.
And oh, wow.
Manus Rider as well, but in comes the team and turn this face up, and that is plenty enough damage. And Dezani extends the hand as Seth Manfield defeats him 2-0 in the opening round here.
Wow.
That's a huge damage hit, too. 7, 10, 13.
Yeah, it's a big attack.
Didn't actually need it, but he had it. So there we go. Seth Manfield wins round number 1. It looks like we've got one more feature match running, and would love to jump in on this one. It's Reed Duke, who we actually watched draft, and he's playing against Michael Gould. Remember, this is the first round of action here at the Pro Tour, so there's definitely an excitement and nervousness, some jitters that you have to kind of work through before you kind of find your groove. And the players are always really happy to escape the first round with a win to kind of get themselves set up to look forward. If you lose your first round, you feel a little off balance. You feel a little bit like behind, and you got some catching up to do. All right, so here we are. Let's take a look. Reed Duke on the left-hand side.
And that is Michael Gould on the right. This is tied at 1 apiece. See a pair.
Hey, look, it's a bellowing saddle brute. If you watched the draft with us just about an hour ago, you would not be shocked at all to see a bellowing saddle brute for Reed Duke there. He's got 3 of those uncommons in his deck, and he clearly valued them quite highly. And here's a big turnover.
Oh, man.
All right. Oh, that's a nice one.
That's a Krumar Bond.
Yeah, Krumar Bodkin is just going to eat Salt Road Patrol there.
3 cards. I have 5. Okay.
Looks like Michael is from Canada.
Reed's still with 5 cards after that big flip. I mean, things are looking good for Reed. He's at 11 life. It looks like he had to cast a Saddle Brute without being able to trigger Raid.
Your turn.
And
Salt Road Patrol picking up a counter and leaving back just the 0-5 there. So not a great spot here for Michael, as it looks like he's going to be under some assault here from Reed.
I mean,
Reed also, with now 6 cards in hand, probably has a lot of options.
Yeah, he does. I mean, Gould can deal with the board. He's got Kill Shot and an 0-5 blocker to be able to deal with the Bellowing Saddle Brood, at least sort of. But, I mean, Reed, a lot more gas in his hand.
4. Correct.
Yeah, we see a Bitter Revelation, Murek, Nightblade, Sorin, Death Frenzy, and Dead Drop. I mean, that is a stacked hand.
Bloodfire Mentor for Michael Gould should be shaking a little bit in his boots there. 'Cause yes, 5 toughness is a lot, but going to be under a lot more assault than that. And in they come. So the Mentor's going to jump in front, and that leaves Michael taking 5 damage from the Krumar Bondkin. Now, what's the follow-up here for Reed? Death Frenzy. So Death Frenzy, but there's going to be a response. Loot. Might as well get that value out of it before it's gone anyway. Looks like he's got a few extra lands in his hand.
I'm sorry if they tapped it. Judge, I tapped the wrong mana for the Death Frenzy.
Right, Reed just he forgot to tap black mana, so he's just making sure that he got it right.
I'm correcting it.
Yeah, because he can't cast it without tapping Swamp, so he's not like trying to undo.
Black mana.
Yep. Okay. So let's correct that. You're going to get a... Because we want to make sure that you cast this spell correctly. We've caught it very quickly.
It's still on the stack.
Yeah, it's still on the
I'm
stack.
still resolving
Yep, we're still
Bloodfire.
resolving this. Yep. I'm going to give you a warning for getting this. Okay. Casting spell for incorrect mana.
I still have to discard.
So Reed will receive a warning for that. They just write it on the slip. It doesn't actually affect anything until
Death Frenzy
multiple
results.
warnings are
21
accrued.
life. 12.
Do you go 12? Good. 15.
So, I mean, he's looting it away, but, I mean, he's going to have to draw a lot of cards to have a hand that's the caliber of Duke's, and that Death Frenzy taking care of the Bloodfire Mentor. See Kill Shot Monastery Flock from Good, but it's a lot of defense, but Duke has a lot of offense.
Aspirant with raid.
Oh, man. It's a war name, Aspirant, still Kill Shot and Flock. So Gould successfully developing his board a little, but there's a lot of size on Reed's side of the table.
All right.
Your turn.
Play a Monastery Flock as well.
So the Flock face down.
Oh, no. Is that a dead drop in hand
Yeah,
for Reed
I think
Duke?
it is.
I mean, I haven't quite looked at his graveyard, but
15. Correct.
it looks like he's got plenty of mana. And just straight up getting the 2-for-1 is pretty tough to resist, especially when you get to crack in for 9 damage to follow it up. See if he has that option. It is 10 mana, so even if he's got 5 or 6 lands, it doesn't necessarily mean he can cast it. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So he's actually one short currently. I don't know if he's got a land drop coming, though.
He's got Suspension Field if he wants it. He can deal with Assault Road Patrol. Doesn't really get a blocker out of the way. He can Bitter Revelation to load up his graveyard and set up Dead Drop next turn. I also don't hate just casting Sorin, Solemn Visitor. And
don't hate that play.
Yeah, gaining what would be 11 life on the attack and having a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. That doesn't sound too bad to me.
Suspension Field.
All right, he's going to start off with Suspension Field here, though. That's going to take care of the Assault Road Patrol.
Sure.
So it goes into suspension, and there he is, Sorin, Solemn Visitor. That was Reed's first pick in the whole draft, and he's immediately going to plus Sorin and pass and attack with his 2 biggest creatures. They get +1, +0, and lifelink. They actually get that all the way until Reed's next turn, though. It won't matter here since those are his only 2 creatures. And this is going to be kill shot here from Michael to take down, and he's going to trade. So Reed Duke's going to jump up to 14 life here in the exchange and leave himself facing down a solitary morph up against Sorin.
Now, a lot of the time, you'd have to expect that your Sorin would, maybe not survive the counterattack. 5 loyalty, no blockers, but Good's Morph only has 0 power, so that Sorin is here to stay.
Yeah, I bet you Reed had to hold his breath for a second there. Good was like, attack Sorin. He's like, okay. And then you're kind of waiting for him to dump a bunch of mana into it to turn it into a Weapon Master for Reed or something like that. But no.
Sure.
All right, Merrick Nightblade.
Sure.
And Reed is going to take this opportunity to make a 2/2 flying vampire as well. And because Reed now knows that that morph is not going to gain any more power by being turned face up. So.
Right. Is Reed's thinking, okay, like even if it could have only done 1 more damage to Sorin, he would have turned it face up to be able to do that.
Yeah, because that would have made it so that if Reed wanted to make a 2/2 flying vampire, would have had to kill Sorin.
Right. and Reed with just 2 Bitter Revelations in his hand. I mean, the card quality he has access to is incomparable.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's got 11 mana for his dead drop now as well. If he wants to blast off that graveyard. The thing is, he actually is just incentivized to wait on dead drop here, right?
Yeah, I mean, no need to use it on a single creature. Just keep ticking up Sorin, keep attacking.
Here's Bitter Revelation, though, for Reed.
This will take me to 12.
Which is going to drop him down to 12 life. Bitter Revelation in the middle to late part of the game is nasty.
Yeah, it is. Weirdly, in this situation, a lot of the time people don't want to look at lands. Reed only has a single black mana, so he's been constrained on what he's been able to cast each game. I mean, still spells probably more valuable than lands here, but a second swamp is not the end of the world.
True. He gets rid of a Chief of the Scale and a Plains. He does find that other swamp here.
Sure.
And he's got a Karu Bloodsucker to follow up. Plus Sorin. And he's ready to battle. Here we go. So that's actually 6 damage coming into Michael. But Michael's got Bring Low on the Merrick Nightblade. All right, so it hits the bin. And he's going to take 3 damage. That's going to put Reed back up to 15. And Michael is doing a good job of stemming the immediate threats, but you got to feel like he's just falling behind further and further here as Reed is playing multiple spells per turn and has more cards in hand than Michael does.
And as a Sorin on the
and by the way, has a
battlefield.
Planeswalker as well.
Oh, wow.
Master the Way. And he's going to target Reed.
Redirect.
And he's going to redirect it over to Sorin. So Sorin down. So he's been able to solve these problems one thing at a time, but that Bitter Revelation is going to be the card, I think, that just pulls Reed way ahead in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And Duke untapping with Karu Bloodsucker, too. Karu Bloodsucker having an ability to sack creatures to make it bigger. Whenever something of yours that's big dies, you gain some life. We've seen Reed gain a ton of life from the lifelink on Sorin. So despite the fact that he's cast, multiple Bitter Revelations, he's still at a very healthy 15 life.
Yeah, here's another one, Zach. So you got to figure, the first one was super bad for Michael, and now he's just chaining them together. And it's hard to imagine that Reed is going to lose this game from any type of parity situation, and he's actually ahead a little bit, to start with. And now he's filtering through his deck, adding cards to his graveyard, and just getting way ahead. He does need to seal the deal. Remember, this is a game 3 for these players. Are we going to see that flock turn face up here?
I think so.
Is it time to start blocking?
Yeah. Oh well. I mean, maybe not. Maybe he just wants to take 2 damage and not reveal what he has. But I mean, Reed's already demonstrated that he's not taking the morph very seriously.
No, he knows that it's nothing great. He probably knows that it's Monastery Flock, maybe Dragon's Eye Savants. But here's another Bellowing Saddle Brute to add to the board for Michael.
and we've and Reed still hasn't cast Dead Drop.
No,
which is just kill 2 creatures.
Right.
So
In this case, he could do it basically for black mana as well. The problem is Michael just still hasn't found a second creature to play. So, I think if you're in Reed Duke's seat, he's feeling pretty good about being able to sandbag Dead Drop until my opponent finds a second creature. That's
right.
Pretty sweet.
I mean, and Smite the Monstrous from Gould's hand and Mindswipe. Mindswipe, pretty big game. It could conceivably deal with that Dead Drop. Reed at 13 and Gould with a lot of mana. He might be able to sneak through an attack with Flock and get most of the way there.
Wow.
Especially if Reed pays some more life. But, oh, man, Armament Core about to set up a big attack.
Yeah, so he's got right now 4, 5, 6, 7. He's got 8 power. He's going to get 2 more counters. So even with an all-out attack, it would leave him 1 short of lethal here against Michael. But Michael's going to have to fire off this Mind Swipe here. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Wow.
Wow, that's a big hit.
It's a lot of damage.
Mind Swipe's one of those interesting cards for Limited because there are actually late game scenarios where you're so far ahead that it actually incentivizes you not to play spells.
Yeah.
If you're sitting at 8, and you're like, oh, I could just play this random morph that doesn't really do much.
Right.
You just don't because you can get mind swept right out of the game. So Duke is going to drop down to 5 here, and now you got to wonder about cards like Aerostorm again.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, can he piece together a win here? Interestingly, Michael had been playing all of his lands, so that made his Mind Swipe better. It also made his Master of the Way worse. It was only for 2.
Right. Although big enough to take out Sorin.
Yeah, it was big enough.
Which is what he was going for. I mean, I think what Reed has to do is leave mana open for his Bloodsucker, because then he can sacrifice Saddle Brute, drain Gould for 2, and get out of Aerostorm range.
He can also force a block here, right?
With Gould at 11, I think so. Yeah,
he's just going to Dead Drop now. He's going for the win right now. And there's the Flock. So Reed is going for the victory right here. I think he has enough mana to do all of it, right?
Yeah, well.
Let's see. This is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, it's still 10.
He can do 10.
Yeah, it's still 10. All right, so he's going to hit him for 8. And
It's your turn. 3.
what did he draw?
The suspense is killing me. We see Smite the Monstrous, so he can deal with Saddle Brute, but not with everything else. Oh, it's
another Kiru Bloodsucker.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, now did you see that?
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute.
Literally, thinking about the Mind Swipe player we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I'll go to combat.
Yeah, I like that play better, Reed.
Yeah, that's game.
And he's going to battle, and there's nothing left for Michael Good to do. And Reed Duke defeats him 2-1. That was close. What if he had it?
Man. Such justice.
Yeah. So great stuff from the future match area in our first round here. Wow. This format, Zach, is mind-blowing. Like, it is so difficult. We get the luxury of seeing the hands and seeing the face-down morphs, but the players don't, and it is incredible stuff down there.
Yeah, just to recap, we saw Hain go 2-0 over Ichikawa. We saw Manfield take it 2-0 over Dezani. Not on screen, but what happened, we saw even Flock beat Danny Goldstein 2-1, and then, of course, Reed Duke taking his first match at the Pro Tour.
Right.
A lot of action.
As they go. So yeah, this is going to be great. We've already watched one draft, right? And we also saw Jeremy Dezani's draft here on the stream as well. Tomorrow, of course, we're going to be doing it all over again. But we still got 2 more rounds of action here from the Limited, and that's just to begin the day. We've also got 5 rounds of brand new Standard, and we have been, kind of listening in on some of the pro teams and, kind of tapping a shoulder here and there. It's pretty spicy stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of decks out there. There is crazy stuff going on. We saw so many different kinds of decks in the feature match area just in round 1 Unlimited. We're going to see that in Constructed, too. I am excited to see what people were able to brew up.
Yeah, but first we get 2 more rounds of draft, which, I can't wait to see.
I know that's your favorite.
It is my favorite. And, we've seen people take vastly different takes on this format.
Yeah.
This, normally by the time we get to the Pro Tour and the teams have been in their respective houses and kind of ground things out, had a lot of conversations, there will be some truths that emerge, right? Now, maybe you believe them or maybe you don't, but usually when a big group of pros comes to one conclusion, you can be pretty sure that they're pretty close or even right on. And here, that is just not the case. Like, we have been asking people throughout the course, and they have been all over the place. Why don't we send it down, though? Rashad Miller is in the feature match area with Reed Duke.
Hi, I'm Rashad Miller, down in the feature match area with Reed Duke, and we watched Reed draft, and you were drafting basically a black-white deck, kind of a splash of green. So I looked at, I came over in the beginning of your game, and it looked like your opening hand had a lot of green and a little white.
White and green for that game, yeah. So that game, I had kind of a slow start out of the gates. Probably didn't hit my black mana till turn 5 or 6 or something like that, but by then I had really powerful hand, and with just barely enough time to deploy all my cards, I was able to win a close match.
So how important is it in this 3-color draft format to at least have multiple colors versus the colors of the cards you can actually cast for the game?
I would say paying attention to the mana in your deck is one of the most important things about this format. There's not any secret strategy to go 2 colors, go 3 colors, go this many colors, but you just have to be very aware of what's going on and put a premium on mana fixing. Even like you said, I was mostly a 2-color deck, but had mana problems in one of those games. So even getting the 2-color dual lands is very important in a deck like this.
All right, so you had a big year last season, which is still also this year. But you were at the top of the Player of the Year race for almost all the way to the end. Got a top 8 under your belt. So what's next for Reed Duke? What are your goals for this season?
Well, yeah, I had as good a year as anyone could ask for. If you rewind the clock, 18 months, I'd be so thrilled to know that I could be a platinum player, qualified for the World Championships, everything like that. But I didn't win Player of the Year. I wasn't the team captain for United States. So this year, I'm really looking forward to the fresh start, and I'm just going to put my best foot forward and, shoot for the stars, so to speak.
All right, that's Reed Duke. I'm Rashad Miller. Send it back to the booth.
Shooting for the stars, he says. I like it, and you can't blame him. I mean, it's interesting because you can get just a little hint of like, well, I didn't quite get exactly where I wanted to go there, and it looks like he's ready to try to get there this season.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he can't look too far from his own teammates on Pantheon that were able to take that slot for the USA at the World Magic Cup. So then again, I don't think we're going to see a bad year from Reed. I think he's going to
put
up
too.
some crazy
He said
numbers.
put his best foot forward. So right now, players are finishing out their matches, and while we wait for the next round to get paired, we're going to send it back to the news desk. But we'll be back here in just a little bit with the second round of draft here from Hawaii. We'll see you in a bit.
All right, thank you so much to the guys down in the booth, bringing you all the action of round 1. Rich Hagan, Brian David Marshall here with you. We've got plenty to tide us over to round 2. Let's just wrap up some of the key scores. So, in our feature pod, Suhan Yoon defeated Alexei Oromoniak of Belarus. John Stern is a winner over Julian Poirot. Jeremy Dezani, of course, you saw go down to Seth Manfield. Adrian Sullivan, he's played on a bunch of Pro Tours, ran about a 50% win rate, a noted deck builder. He was up against Louis Scott Vargas, who had a very entertaining looking deck. Got to see him build a little bit of his deck. They're still playing right at the tail end here of round 1. Meanwhile, in their pod, the Brazilian Marcos Rogério defeated Steve Phillips. Mark Tobias, one of the German players here, he went down to Tom Martell, who traditionally BDM has been a little bit of a slow starter.
A first round win for Tom seems like a great start.
Yes, a big win.
Considering how strongly he's been able to finish Pro Tours, he has to feel like if he could get off to a 2-1 start in a draft, then he can put himself in a great position to get yet another top 8 in an already very impressive career.
Someone else who often has a slow start is Shota Yasuoka, the 2006 Player of the Year. He's under the gun again. Lost to Dave Shields, who's a terrific player.
Yep.
Been right in the mix, top 16s, top 32s at a bunch of Pro Tours. 27 years old now, I believe, Dave Shields. Meanwhile, of course, we just saw Michael Good.
Who was not good enough against Reed Duke that round. Reed Duke, I'm curious to watch him this whole season, right? Just fell short of the Player of the Year, got his first Pro Tour top 8 of his career. So it's gonna be exciting to watch him and see, and he's off to a great start in this tournament. So, very excited.
So, only a few results still to come in. We're going to keep you informed all about that, but we want to go a little bit into.
What is that up in the upper left-hand corner of our screen there?
3 matches left.
Okay.
Do you know what that means?
What does that mean?
It means there are 3 matches left.
So people are still playing Magic right now.
That's right.
Outside of the feature match area.
So we'll keep in touch with that. And when you see no matches left, just to let you know, you're still probably quite a good 6-7 minutes away from feature match action, because the round gets paired, it gets put up in the main room, everyone gets to their seats, they announce feature matches, then the players go down to the feature match area. That's a little bit of a walk. And then they get settled in, we resolve all the mulligans and so on, and then we're ready to rock and roll. So when you see 0 matches, think in your head, 6-7 minutes, and we're in business. But to get you there, it's wedge time.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about limited.
Who are we giving a wedgie to?
No, not wedgie, just wedge.
All right, Marshall, you get away this time.
Right. So, 5 clans, 3 colors in each. How do they work out in draft? Well, Magic Online is now running Khans of Tarkir drafts, and we've got all the data for you. So we're going to walk you through the 5 clans. Tomorrow, Marshall Sutcliffe will be sitting here, and he'll talk about some of the color pairs that, who knows, might turn out to be the key to unlocking this draft format. But to start you off, why don't we go 3 color, and let's go with the Arbzan. So BDM, take it away. Who and what are the Arbzan?
I mean, the Arbzan is really all about +1/+1 counters. It's about Outlast, it's about like big mid-range creatures, and then playing these kind of, it's almost like a defensive game where you're like, I'm gonna stay alive, and then my life-linked flying, death touch guys are gonna fly over and get you. Like a lot of the creatures, put +1/+1 counters on themselves, but they also grant abilities to other creatures with +1/+1 counters. I'm also really curious to see how Abzan's going to play in Constructed, because I think that there's some interesting interactions with Heroic and Outlast and Tribute, and all sorts of stuff gets to collide together. You really want to open something like High Sentinels of Arashan has been on Magic Online a big predictor of winning with an Abzan deck.
Yes, that's one of my early cards for feeling miserable when you see it come down on the other side. It's like, that's going to hurt. All right, why don't we take a look at the top commons that are being drafted in Arbzan decks. So what have we got?
Well, I mean, they used to say Abzan guide. It was funny, we were watching a draft table, and Abzan guides were just kind of like, bicycling around the table looking for people to get on them. And there wasn't anyone there, but Abzan guide is a premium common if that's the 3-color direction you take. But you can also be like a little bit more open. You can take something like an Einok Bondkin or Debilitating Injury early, and sort of say, okay, I've got a white card, I've got a black card, where am I going to go from here?
Yeah, and Debilitating Injury, giving something -2/-2, just that line of text isn't necessarily super exciting, but it's all about the context. And remember, all those face-down cards, they're 2/2s.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like Debilitating Injury. I had an interesting conversation with someone out on the floor who is very down on that card, actually. A lot of people consider it to be one of the top commons. It's going to be really interesting to watch how that card moves around in people's pick orders this weekend.
You're going to tell us who that is?
No.
Just checking. All right. How about the top 5 uncommons then in the Arbzan? Let's see what juicy things we get in the silver rarity.
Well, there you see Armament Core. We just watched Reed Duke deploy an Armament Core to help secure his win over Matthew Good. Abzan Charm, obviously all the charms are going to be premium uncommons in their clans, and then the mana fixing, the Citadel is just get all my mana. But Abzan Battle Priest, Chief of the Scale, I'm actually not surprised that's not even a little higher.
Okay. That's our first clan. It's the Arbzan, and now we're going to go to, I'm going to sit up a bit straighter now because I like these. It's the Jeskai. That's my clan, that's for sure. So what are we looking at here?
Aggressive, cheap creatures that get better when you cast spells and disrupt your opponent's plan. You know, oh, I'm going to kill that. My guys are going to get better. If I can do that in mid-combat, even better.
Yep, aggressive and cheap. That's pretty much me.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the top 5 commons in the Jeskai deck.
Wind Scout, a Efreet Weapon Master, a card we just saw, Bring Low, Arrow Storm, and again, Einok Bondkin. You know, again, even though it's an Outlast card, it's a cheap creature for your blue, red, white deck.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a number of Jeskai Wind Scout that you don't want in a Jeskai Prowess deck, but I suspect it's more than I've ever managed to put in a deck.
I'm surprised Jeskai Elder is. I guess that's uncommon.
Right.
Yeah,
because that's the 1/2 Saboteur.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the top 5 uncommons in Jeskai.
So
not there either.
It's not there either, but trust me, you want it. Jeskai Charm, Mystic Monastery, and Winterflame, which a card we also just saw used, or I just saw. Maybe it wasn't on camera. High Spire Mantis and Arc Lightning, obviously, just fantastic cards.
I love sets where there is things like Jeskai Charm, where the 4 damage to the face is eminently playable, because generally a card like Lava Axe, if you lose to a Lava Axe, you go, well, that's okay, because you played Lava Axe and I'm hopefully going to beat you more often than not because you're playing Lava Axe. So you don't play around that. But Jeskai Charm is very, very real.
To be fair, you would play a 3-mana instant Lava Axe, probably.
Well, exactly, yeah. Yes, and this is 4 damage, but I love the fact that it exists. I've seen so many games where players at 9 are thinking, do I really want to go to 6? Because then he only needs to sneak in 1 little attacker, plus he has the charm and I'm dead.
Well, again, in Jeskai, think about it. If you have 2 or 3 guys who have prowess, and now I'm like, okay, 4 to you. Now I have bonus +1/+1 to 3 of my guys. It starts to get out of hand.
Yeah. So those are the top uncommons in Jeskai. We move on now to what I think of as the most complicated in a way of the clans.
Only played by Magic players with the finest of tastes, the most soulful of eyes.
Yeah. Best dressed sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Loveliest wives.
Yes. I love Sultai.
Yeah.
This is, and I just want to use my graveyard as a resource, even when I'm not playing in this format. So this format lets me do that, very easily. Cards like Scout the Borders are insane. I've seen people out there playing Tygon Scheming on the floor.
Yes.
People are playing Tygon Scheming. That's a card that is the bane of a Magic player, right? It's a card that does nothing, right? You just put this card in your graveyard and you put 5 more cards in your graveyard maybe. Yeah. You're sifting through your deck. It's an index. Do you know what I mean? It's it is not supposed to be a playable card.
It really doesn't do very much.
But there are people who are out there who are playing it. They really like it because it fills your yard, so you can play things. So you can, your murderous cuts and your whatnots just are ridiculously cheap to cast.
Let's look at the top 5 commons then in the Sultai archetype.
Debilitating Injury. We've talked about this card already. Just clear the path, get things out of the way. Abomination of Goodall. Again, a good cheap creature you can play on turn 3. You get to unmorph it on turn 5. And it also is a recurring source of graveyard fuel for you because you get to loot every time you deal damage with it to a player. And then Dismal Backwater. You really want mana fixing in Sultai is, I think, more important than many of the other clans.
Yeah, it's also interesting. You see a couple of Delve cards there, the Sultai Scavenger and Hooting Mandrills. And I think a lot of players who haven't played with Delve much before, they assume that they're meant to wait until these things are super, super cheap. But it turns out that if you just put a couple of cards in your graveyard, it takes them absolutely into the range of more than playable and just actually really rather good.
Right. Scout the Borders, is great, but sometimes you don't have that. Sometimes you just trade 2 or 3 creatures early on. I put my Wetland Sandbar in front of your morph. We trade. I do something else, and then I just pay 4 mana or 5 mana for my Hooting Mandrills or for my Sultai Scavenger.
A question from Twitter for you, by the way. If a Wetland Sandbar doesn't have any friends, is it a lonely sandbar?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, just checking.
Very lonely.
Good. Let's move on to the top 5 uncommons then in the Sultai clan. What will we be delving here, if anything?
Well, Murderous Cut is your delve card, right? That's the card you're looking for here. You're just looking to pay B or B1 and just remove anything, right? Like I just want to kill it. Ice Feather Aven, this is a card that Marshall, Sutcliffe, and I will fight over often in drafts. It's like two of our, both of us, it's among our favorite cards.
Yeah.
And, a card like Sultai Charm. I love Sultai Soothsayer. Again, 2/5, lets you sort of impulse off the top of your deck, put cards in your yard, and get a card.
You really love this card selection business, don't you?
I do. I
Yeah.
love velocity. I love tearing through my deck and, looking at a lot of cards and making decisions and killing things and bouncing things.
Yeah, I mean, the Ice Feather Aven is just, you look at the morph ability and say, okay, when it turns face up, you get to bounce something.
Right.
But the thing is, if it was just a 2/2 flyer for 2,
Gaius Skyfolk.
exactly, you'd be super happy.
A highly playable, limited common.
Absolutely. So that's the Sultai. Let's go to Mardu. They're up next, and it is time for raid. So let's rock and roll with them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most aggressive clan. This is the one that's often, I think most often going to be like red-white or white-black with a touch of the third color. I think this is the one where you're really rewarded for being close to a 2-color aggro deck. You see cards like Mardu Skull Hunter, but there's also like Chief of the Edge, Chief of the Scale, things like that. And you really want to be close down in the 2-color area. So,
Yeah. Interesting, looking out at the tables during deck building, there were a lot of those decks that were 19 to 21 red cards,
right.
plus 2 to 4 black cards. And I think the dynamic there is that your murderous cuts, your debilitating injuries, your dead drops, they're going to be gone round the table because people are color blind to those. They're just good cards.
Right.
But the red seems to be a little more open for people to hoover up as the mono red thing. And things like, I mean, no one apart from the Mardu wants a Valley Dasher. Really.
Right.
A 2/2 haste guy that has to keep attacking.
Right.
Which means that if you want them all, you can have them all, and that's a lot of hasty 2-drops.
Right. And a lot of times you can be that 2-color deck, and then something like a Butcher of the Horde, you can just splash your rare in.
I can certainly confirm that at GP Orlando last weekend, where the sort of set came really into view, Butcher of the Horde, I would say, was the card that was most splashed.
Sure.
The card that people thought they were 2-color.
You're talking about sealed decks
and people would just go, yeah, can I even half play this third color? Butcher of the Horde, it's in. It's a massive deal, and could be a massive deal in Constructed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it in some 75 card lists.
Okay, so let's take a look at the top 5 commons in Mardu then, and see what we've got here. There's the list. The Horde Chief, which I like very much. The Ponies, Anot Bonkin, debilitating injury, of course, and Mardu Skull Hunter you see there. What do you make of Ponyback Brigade? What's your take on that?
I like it a lot. I was taking it, I think, over Mardu Horde Chief early on, and I've switched. I mean,
Okay.
I like the Horde Chief a little better.
You want the 2 rather than the 4 because it's just a
I just want to
half the
be
cost.
able to play it. I want to keep my deck really aggressive. But I mean, Ponyback Brigade is really, especially if you have all these kind of like trumpet blasts or, cheap cards that are going to boost your team, you want to go wide.
Mm-hmm. So there are your top commons. Let's take a look at the top uncommons. Not going to see these as much, of course. Only 3 of these in every pack, unless you get a foil. Of course, we've got a charm. And then what's the deal, BDM, with the pair? The Chief of the Edge, that's the aggressive side.
Right.
Chief of the Scale, the defensive side. What do you make of those 2?
I mean, both of them are great. You just want to be like a white-black base warrior deck. You want to give all your warriors +1 on attack. You want to give as many, you give them +1 on defense. And, you just want to come out of the gate. You'd be pretty happy with this card just as is, a 3/2 for 2. But, if it makes everybody else better, well, that's great.
Yeah, and as usual, just the charms they're just universally
Yeah.
awesome. There isn't a bad charm there.
Mardu Heart Piercer is also, I think one of the premium cards in this archetype, right? Like just, people just call it Flame Tongue Kavu out on the floor.
Right, yeah, which it isn't quite.
It isn't quite, but 2 damage is quite a bit in this format.
For reasons we may have mentioned before.
Yeah.
Morph,
Yes.
morph. We are almost done. Let's take you to Timor. Green, blue, and red are the 3 colors of the Timor. What do they do, BDM?
Well, we just watched Jeremy Dezani draft this. You want to play 4 power creatures. You want to get ferocious bonuses. You want to savage punch things. You want to, crater claw things. You just want to make fat creatures and then just dominate the board. It's
Okay.
pretty simple.
Yeah. So why don't we take a look at the top 5 commons in Temur?
Wow, there you see the Snowhorn Rider, there you see the Savage Punch, and again, Rugged Highlands is a card we watched Jeremy Dezani really prioritize in the draft because, again, needed that mana.
Okay, and what about the top 5 uncommons? Ice Feather Raven again, a Charm again, and Bear's Companion.
Yes, and which also had the Bear's Companion in Jeremy's deck.
No, but that would have been the Bear's Companion's Companion, Bear's Companion's Companion.
That's correct.
Good. Glad we
That
got
would-
that sorted out. And that, boys and girls, are the 5 wedges here at Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir. Is 3 color the way to go? Is 5 color the way to go? Should you just be a pair? Can you get the edge and the scale working together in black-white? Pair. It's time, a bear pair. It's time
No, I was saying
for
pairings.
Yeah, oh, that too. Pair. Right. Round 2. Let's go do it. Sack Hill, Marshall Sutcliffe. See you in a bit.